So welcome to the third of 5 sessions for principal designates in partnership with the Department for Education. Just a reminder that these sessions are being recorded. If you could keep your mics off and cameras on, that would be great for our speakers as we go through. Just an introduction, so my name is Tom Orr, I'm the Deputy Head of School Programmes at the Schools Network, and I'm filling in for Hannah today as she has some intermittent Wi-Fi issues. We are very lucky to be joined by Susan Poole, our NSN specialist, who has been involved with the Free Schools programme since 2011. She has experience as a founding member of Hatfield Community Free School and has project managed the opening of 3 primary free schools. And I've probably not done that as much justice as Good John, so I will have to elaborate in just a moment. Unfortunately, we're unable to be joined by Sally Dodd of Brambles Primary today. However, we will be arranging an opportunity for you to meet with Sally and engage with other heads about preparing for your Readiness to Open meeting. We'll probably host this on the NSN Hub, so do keep an eye out for that. So today's session will be a little bit shorter than planned, so we should have plenty of time to answer any questions at the end. So do please pop those in the chat as we go along. And with that, I will pass to Susan to get us kicked off.
Very much. It's nice to see you all virtually anyway. One day we might actually get back to meeting in person, which would be jolly nice. As Tom mentioned there, I've been involved with Free School since 2011. I've opened 6, I say 6.5. I've been opening at 1 primary school for the last 3 years, and it's still going to be another 2 years before it opens. So it's the longest school pregnancy you've ever seen, I think, in that terms. So I'm going to talk to you about Ofsted pre-registration inspection and also the Readiness to Open meeting. So Graham, I think, is doing the slides. So if you want to pop those up for me, thank you. Thank you very much. So that's me. So next one, please. So the first thing we're going to look at then is the Ofsted pre-registration inspection. So what is it? I'm sure if you've been reading your preschool openers guidance, you'll know it's not a normal inspection, but just the very word of Ofsted actually doesn't send chills through you almost, but it's like, oh goodness me, it's Ofsted. So it does produce some anxiety automatically just by that term. If you've been working really, really hard on this, and if you've been following what's in the proposer guidance, and you've been listening to your DFE delivery officer and whoever's project managing your project, you'll be in the right place. So it isn't a new piece of work. It's just a culmination of the work that you're already doing. So it isn't the big scary thing. I'm not going to give you any magic answers today, but what I am going to talk to you about is the fact that there's nothing scary about it. It's just another step in the process. And it's actually really interesting Ofsted to do, particularly if you've been through ordinary Ofsteds in an open school. But yes, technically they can decide if you're going to open or not. But if you've been doing everything all the way along as you should have been through your checkpoint meetings, following your proposer guidance and working with your delivery officer, then you will have done everything you need to do at this point. And then if you've done everything you need to do, there's nothing that they can uncover that will put a spanner in the works. So overall, do not worry. I've been through it, and I say do not worry, and that's very, very kind of me to sit here and say do not worry, but that doesn't stop me feeling absolutely sick going into it, and the relief afterwards when it's over, when I've done them as well. So I do understand, but truly do not worry. They're not there to catch you out. They're there just to make sure that you've done what you need to do to make the school safe. Next one, please. So why are they doing it? If I go on to my next slide on my screen, my notes, that would help. So if you're not registered with Ofsted, then you're not legally a school. So that's the first point you need to understand. And you're an independent school. Different people have different ideas of what an independent school means. Many people think it's a private school, but an independent school means one that's not funded through the local authority. So technically and legally, you're an independent school, but you're not a private school. You're an academy the same as everybody else. And it doesn't actually mean anything to you day to day when you're running the school. So your education expert will look, the DfE's education expert will look at part 1 there, which is quality of education. That isn't covered at all by the Ofsted inspection or the Ofsted visit that you're going to receive. In order for the inspection to take place, then you need to have registered with Getting Information About Schools, and you'll probably, if you haven't already had that, you'll probably be getting that form quite soon, so you can set it up. It's not a big job, it's just a half-hour admin job, and it's another tick on the list for the DfE to get you open. And I don't say it's another tick in a box that, you know, we can be quite derogatory about, it's another tick in the box to get it done, but this truly is another tick on the list of things that you need to do to get the school open. Once you are fully registered and the Ofsted is completed, I just wanted to add a little caveat in here that you will get your DfE number, which will allow you to do all sorts of things, and suppliers will then start to recognise you, but do not expect to get your DfE number immediately. That might not come through till July or August, so just be forewarned on that. And if you're in a trust, then great, you'll be able to use your own trust to do procurement, but if you're not, then you want to consider how you're going to do that, because some suppliers don't recognise you until you've got your DfE number and it's actually active on the system. Thank you. So used to be 2 blocks in around May and June, and it might change due to COVID, but listening to the government yesterday, things are going back to normal. So that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going back to face-to-face visits for Ofsted and face-to-face visits for opening your school, but that's something the DfE are going to be working on, having listened to the government yesterday. So normally May and June are the 2 blocks, and the DfE, your DfE delivery officer will write you with the block that you're in. If you're doing really well, you'll be a bit earlier, and if you're a little bit later, it doesn't mean you're doing badly, it just means that the DfE are giving you time to make sure you've got everything in order. So it's not a bad thing, it's just they're giving you time to make sure that it's all okay. There isn't any flexibility in the dates, they'll tell you when you're coming and you have to be there. Now, the guidance says it doesn't have to be a principal designate that is there, it could be just the project manager or the trust, but I'm sure if there's any principal designates in the room, can you imagine having Ofsted come in to visit what is your school and you not be there? And so I think probably would want to be there. You'll get several days notice. If you're opening more than one school, it could well be on the same day. So be prepared for that. Be prepared for the fact that you'll have somebody in the background who is sitting ready, that if the Ofsted inspector asks for something, then you've got somebody in the background who can scurry away and get that for them. So you can focus on the meeting that you'll be having. And if you've got 2 schools going at the same time. Hi, Tracy. Yeah, we'll come to that bit in a little moment. So I'll pick up how many people can be there in the meeting. Oh, apologies, no, I won't. That's for the Readiness for Open meeting. But how many people can be present in the meeting? You can take in the people that you need to take in. Usually when I'm doing it, it's the principal designate and myself, because one, I know what's been going on for the last 18 months and can talk about the building, can talk about what's going on with the recruitment. The PD generally has only come in quite recently, but what they can talk about then is about the safeguarding, the behaviour policy and all those sorts of things and how they're going to run the school. So we make a good team doing it like that. So I wouldn't overwhelm it with too many people, but also have the people that might have more information on standby, just in case you think they would be better placed to answer the question rather than yourselves. One thing that they will want to talk to you about, but not necessarily see, is a single central record. So how are you running a single central record? Because at this point, you might not actually have anybody on it. You might have the PD just on it, or you might have the project manager, but you're not going to have much on there. But what they will want to seek is assurances that you have got a very thorough system in place and that it's all working, and you can talk to them about how you're getting DBSs done, etc. The accessibility plan is something you're going to need to have, even if your building isn't finished yet. You'll need to know enough to get this done, to talk to them, not just a current plan, but a 3-year plan about increasing accessibility to the building, curriculum and information, which is part of the Equalities Act. Get information about schools form, covered that. So be able to talk about your governors, or trustees, be able to talk about both layers of governance actually. If you're in a multi-academy trust, who they are, where they come from, what their experience is, what are you doing to get them ready for September when the school opens. That applies more to your local governing body. We talked there about how it might change, but the inspections are likely to be in May and June. And you need to provide evidence that you meet the independent school standards. So I don't think there's a link to this in the slides, but we can send you a link to the independent school standards if you haven't already seen that from there's a link from the proposer's guidance. Apologies, I can't speak this morning. And so if you haven't, then after today's meeting, I suggest you sit down and start looking at what the independent school standards say. What is it that you need to do so that you're ready for May or June when it happens? And that there's nothing you're going to have to do for that you don't need to do to open your school. So it's not extra work, it's just part of the work as you're going along. So if you start preparing yourself now, then it won't come as a big, get your folder together, start getting your policies in there hard copy, because we all know from Ofsted that there's nothing that makes you look quite as professional as when they come in, you say, oh, and here's this, and you just give it to them. And I know it shouldn't matter so much if it's beautiful and tidy, but it does, because that's the impression they're giving you. Oh, you're giving them, apologies, about how professional you are and ready for this meeting. And the DfE will confirm when your slots are going to be as soon as they've worked out what the process is going to be. So if you aim to have everything ready for the beginning of May, then you'll be prepared and ready for the actual inspection itself. Thank you. Next one. So usually this is on site, but they've been in the past 2 years, I can't imagine why, these have been done remotely using somebody on a mobile phone when you need to show people things. So it's been over Teams or Zoom, and either the builders or one of you would then use it to take them around the building and show them, because they want to see the building and have that site discussion. It's currently planned like that, but let's wait and see what happens. Again, your DfE delivery officer will be able to talk to you about that once they know the details. So if there are no restrictions, then what I normally do, she says, what we normally would do is, like I said, you've got all your folders, you've got everything printed out in hard copy, so you can show them, and then they come to the site, or it might not be a site, they might come to your office and they sit down and they'll have a chat with you. Nice coffee, nice biscuits. They'll have a chat with you, talk through, tell me about your school, what is it aims. They've already done a little bit of research, but just having a general chat. And then they'll probably come to you and they'll say, right, what I would like to do now is spend some time going through the information that you've been asked to provide for me. And you'll basically leave them to it maybe for an hour or so, and then they'll give you a shout and you'll go back in and they'll have some questions from what's in the information that you've got there. Talk to them about those, and then they're going to want to do a site visit either on the phone or in person. So you're going to take them around and talk to them about the building. If it's a brand new building, I'm very sorry, it's not quite ready yet, but isn't it going to be beautiful? If it's a temporary accommodation, then you're just going to have to explain to them about why this temporary accommodation works really well for you. There's fewer and fewer schools opening temporary accommodation, so I'm hoping that's not the case for too many of you, because some temporary accommodations can be rather delightful. So what else have we got? The things that you're going to need to, I've mentioned there about having a runner available on the day. So having a project principal designate there as a lead proposer, possibly the lead proposer if that's a different person, or it might be the CEO from the trust, and you will get feedback on the day. So you won't get a definite, this is absolutely fine, it's all sorted. What you will get though is, I was pleased with this, I was pleased with that, you can need to do a little bit more work on that. So they will talk to you about that. Any points I haven't covered on there? Yeah, the one about the fire risk assessment there, you need to let the fire brigade know that you're opening and that you've got a fire strategy in place, even if you're in temporary accommodation. I know your project development grant's quite tight, but it's worth paying to get a fire risk assessment done. One, if it's a new building, you're going to need a detailed one anyway, and you need a professional to do that. And two, if you're in temporary accommodation, absolutely get somebody in, because you don't know the system so well in that building, and whether you might need to do some little tweaks there to make it work for you. And then if the site isn't finished, it might be that you can't actually show them where the medical room is, or where the toilets are going to be, or what the fire strategy is. So be able to talk to them, have a plan in front of you, be able to talk to them and explain to them how it's actually going to work in practice. Thank you. So what next? Gosh, that's little writing, isn't it? So Ofsted will consider their findings and write to the DfE. And they will either come out with two outcomes. One, that your school is likely to meet all the relevant independent school standards when it opens, or two, it's likely to meet them provided it addresses XXX points. If they come back and say that it's all fine, then marvellous, the DfE will be very happy, tick on to the next thing. If not, then there's going to be some outcomes from the inspection, and you'll agree those with the DfE, what your action plan is going to be for those, and then you'll work on them. A revisit might be arranged, or then the DfE will then approve you for opening from the Ofsted perspective. If it's a no, in that you haven't actually met the standards yet, that should not be a surprise to you. In fact, you might even tell the inspector yourself that you haven't completely met that, but you have XYZ plans in place to do that. But even with that caveat on there, it might be, for example, that I had one school where we were opening in temporary accommodation and there were no showers for the Year 7 pupils, but it's a standard in Part 3 of the independent schools standards, and it's a welfare issue, and the Ofsted inspector insisted that that was a requirement. However, it wasn't something that the DfE and the ESFA, understandably not value for money, were prepared to pay for a very short time in temporary accommodation, and so that was something that they accepted. I agree, it was not worth putting showers in to an office building for such a short period. That really, onto the next slide please, then that really is short and sharp trip through Ofsted. Like I said, there's no thank you for uploading that, Hannah. There's no surprises in it. You should be well on your way to preparing this. Does anybody have any questions about the Ofsted inspection? No? Oh, Beth, you've got your hand up.
Hi, sorry, yes. I just wanted to check if, because unfortunately we are in temporary for 2022.
Sorry.
Yes, very good to that. But will they want to see plans for both sites, or will they just be interested in the first phase?
They will be interested in the first phase, and technically they will come back when you're ready to go into your permanent building, but that hasn't actually happened to me in a couple of schools. They've said they will be back in a year's time. So I would have both bits of information available, the temporary and why it's marvellous, she said in inverted commas, why it's marvellous and going to be perfectly fine. You might have brilliant temporary accommodation. And then also the permanent one. They probably won't want to look at the permanent one. It'll just be about making sure that the school is ready to open in the September, but have it there anyway, because actually it is a very different inspection, and you do have some very interesting discussions with the Ofsted inspectors. It's a really different one to go through.
Great, thank you.
Is there a specific format for responding to their requests for information for each part, or shall I use a Word document? I would just use a Word document and work through it. But there might be, Hannah, can you is there a template in the proposer's guidance? I can't remember.
I will have a little look. Stella is on the call. I don't know if she can confirm that or not.
I had it, not as far as I know. I'll double check it, but not as far as I know.
Thank you, Stella. All I've done before is literally just take the school standards, copy them, paste them into a Word document and add my own column on the end with what I was doing. Any more questions on Ofsted? No? Thank you. That was brief, but there's nothing much to say. If you read the documents, do what they say, you'll be absolutely great. And of course, you can speak to your delivery officer at the DfE if you get stuck on any points about how you need to answer it. Like, for example, how do you answer the fact that there's no showers, but we're in temporary accommodation? So, on to the Readiness to Open meeting then. Thank you. Let me get my slides back up on here, so I'm the notes. So, readiness to open meeting, what is it? It is nothing more than your final checkpoint meeting. So whilst it's got a very grand title, it's just a checkpoint meeting. You've already had 3 or 4 of those already. And if you're doing what your project manager, your CEO says, if you're doing what your DFE delivery officer says and your education expert, then you will be absolutely fine. Again, there should be no surprises. It's really important to be absolutely honest, both with Ofsted and with this, because if you're being honest, it does sound quite boring, but some trusts aren't always as honest as they could be, and then it trips them up at the end, and it all goes off because they haven't actually been honest with the DFE as they've been going through it. And the DFE are very much on your side of they want that school open as much as you do. And I know you're going to have some disagreements as you're going through it. We all disagree with colleagues we work with for a long period of time, but they really are on your side wanting to get that school open too. So again, with the Readiness to Open meeting, it's nothing new, it's not a separate exercise, just a culmination of the work that you've been doing preparing for the school. And this is your opportunity, or your second opportunity, because you've just had one with Ofsted there, this is your opportunity to convince them that you are ready to open, and that this is your absolutely, yep, it's all good, we've got a couple of things to tweak, but we're going to be ready to open in September. Thank you. So, why? Final assurance to the DFE that you're going to be ready to open and be on track for good or outstanding. So you could actually be ready, but the things you have in place mean that your school isn't going to be good or outstanding, and that's what's really important here. It's making sure that you're going to be good or outstanding when you open. It might be a little while till you find that out from Ofsted, but you will be able to know from your own internal assessments. So from the proposer guidance there, identify the issues and risks that might prevent the school from opening. And you can see the pupil numbers, robust finances intertwined together, and or getting a good and outstanding at Ofsted. Identify actions needed to mitigate risks and or address the issues, and when necessary, enable ministers to take a decisive action such as to defer before the opening date. Now that's a scary sentence, but it may be that if you are not ready, then they need to defer your opening because you are not going to have the school ready in time for the September. And some of that might well be outside of your control if it's to do with accommodation, for example. Next one, please. So when is it going to take place? May or June, and either at the DFE offices or over Teams. Everything's gone over on online meetings in the past couple of years. That may continue. I don't know what the DFE are planning to do with that sort of thing. Again, time period, as with Ofsted, May or June, it depends where you are in the process. Some of you at the beginning, if you're a straightforward one that's ready to go, and then some maybe the very end of June. But again, it's about giving you the time. It's not a reflection on their belief in your ability to open. It's just giving you time to make sure that you are absolutely ready. The DFE will let you know who they want to have there based on their risk report that you've sent in, which we'll come to in a moment. It's absolute 3-line whip for the chair of the governors or the chair of the trust board. If you've got a local governing body, that's the chair of the governors and the principal designate, and also somebody there for finance. Now that could be your business manager, it could be the finance director, but the DFE will tell you who they want there, depending on what they've read in your report and what areas they would like to dig into a little bit more. Thank you. So in about April time, you're going to receive, if you haven't already, you're going to receive the risk register template, which I'll show you in a second. It is a small document when it arrives, but it can be as big as it needs to be. You need to put as much detail in there, put absolutely everything down. Don't hide anything thinking, oh, if I put this down, they might not be so keen on letting us open. No, put absolutely everything down on there. It can be quite a lengthy, detailed document, so make sure you plan in your project plan time to get this done. I would give it to the principal designate if you have one in place. It is their role to get this done because it's theirs. This is about their school, and also they'll be the one that will be providing the mitigating actions for any risks that come up in there. If you haven't got a PD, then whoever's leading the project, your project manager, will be the best place to do that. But I would also, whilst they might be doing that, if they're not an education, like if they're not a head teacher or a deputy head teacher, I would get somebody who is that to help them with it, or to look over it with them to make sure that they've got the right key points in there, especially in relation to the education. So complete the document, return it 2 weeks prior to the Readiness to Open meeting. And you're going to send it off 2 weeks before, because you've done it and you've done a great big piece of work and you're really happy with it. And actually it will bring out things and you think, you know what, we could do that. So you're already starting to think about the things you need to tweak to get ready for opening in September that you might not have quite covered off. It is a live document though. So as you're going towards the meeting itself, make sure that you're updating it, and then take a new hard copy of the revised one to the meeting itself, or send it over on the day of the meeting if your meeting's online. The other thing you're going to need to ensure you're fully prepared to talk about and to have up to date of the financial templates. Each time the financial templates, now I'm a bit of a spreadsheet nerd and I really like working on the financial templates. Now I'm sure there's not too many of you out there that would be happily to say, oh, I love doing the financial templates. But it's something that you do need to be able to talk about in a great amount of detail. So obviously you're going to have your 100% model, because you're all going to be absolutely full. The schools are going to be chocker to the bursting of all the pupils that are coming through your doors. However, just in case that doesn't happen, and you'd probably be starting to get some idea of that at this point in the year, you're going to need to have a break-even number. It might be 70%, but you might have different break-even number of what the minimum number of pupils you need to open that school. But also be realistic in your financial templates. Don't just say, oh, we've only done 100% because we're definitely going to be 100% full. You don't know what's going to happen between now and September, so just have your contingency plan in there. And the financial template is also a live document. I'm sure you've got somebody looking after it really well for you, but it's each time you actually employ somebody, each time you put in a new contract, each time you decide what your match top size is going to be, you need to make sure that is fully up to date. And with the ever increasing, I say this every year, but it's getting worse every year, isn't it? With the ever increasing pressure on school finances, expect to be grilled on the details, which is absolutely right, because this is public money and they need to make sure, the DfE and the SFA need to make sure that you know what you're doing with the public money. Thank you. So, apologies for the little writing, but Hannah will be able to send this out to you after the meeting. This is an example of a risk register. It has not changed over the years. I can't vouch for it. It won't necessarily change this year, but there's no reason for it to do so. And I'm sure the format would be very similar even if it did. So you can see there. Oh, thank you, Helen, there about the default for the roles to be virtual. Thank you very much. And the risk register it takes you through all the different sections that you need to do to complete it, and it gives you examples of things that you might want to talk about in there. So there's about 4 or 5 pages, but by the time you've put all your information into there, it's been quite a lengthy document, which is absolutely fine. That's what it's there for. And then next slide, please. So what happens next? So you're going to have an action plan that will actually include the stuff from the Readiness to Open meeting and from Ofsted. And then you're going to edit that the same as you would do with your management letter when you get your accounts done. You're going to edit that and you're going to put in there all the actions that you're going to take. And then some of those actions, though, won't actually need to be done by the September, because don't forget, it's also about making sure your school is going to be good and outstanding. Some of the actions will happen over the first year, so it's not about getting everything crammed in. You need to plan the actions on that, because what you absolutely need to make sure is that your principal designate has at least a 2-week break in August, because they're going to need to recharge their batteries ready for September. So during that time in August, who is going to be working on that plan? And then follow up, your DfE delivery officer will be in touch with you anyway to make sure that you're working on that. But just make sure you've got it planned out from when the June time to September, who's going to be working on those points. And actually that is your to-do list from when you have had your Ofsted and ROM meeting to when you actually open in September. So it's a very good to-do list, keeps everything in one place. Complete the urgent actions prior to opening, and then the education person will visit once the school is open. So revisit your project plan and make sure that it ties in with everything, and edit it to put in the actions from there. and use the proposer guidance, which I quite like because it's written very plainly. It's not written in lots of complicated language. And there's some very good checklists in the back of there to use as you're working through things. There's always going to be advice and support available to you. Your project manager, the DfE delivery officer, your education expert, New Schools Network, your own networks, and obviously the ESFA. You won't have your ESFA personal contact until the school opens in September. They might be in touch with you about August time to say I'm your ESFA person, but there's plenty of people out there, particularly Academy's questions are very, very helpful if you need anything. So basically, if you do what it says on the tin or in the proposer guidance and the school standards, you will be absolutely fine. And like I said, you just need to be honest with everything that's going on. And there's plenty of help out there for you. So that's kind of where I am. We've finished going through the slides now. There's an activity to do if we were if we were actually sitting in a room. So I think we'll just skip that one, thank you. And go to any questions. I've got one here from Victoria. Is there a completed practical example of a risk register at all? I don't know if there is. Hannah, do we have one that's completed?
Yes, so we have one that is...
I think I generalised one, didn't I?
Yeah, so we have one that's up on our NSN Hub on a new programme that we've just launched, and I'll speak a little bit about that in just a moment. So we'll share a link to that in the chat in just a moment.
Does anybody else have any other questions? No problem. Okay, well, that's me done then. Thank you very much for coming along. And like I said, there's plenty of support there, and it's nothing, neither of those two things are scary, or there's no secret squirrel stuff going on that you need to know about. It's just follow the instructions from the people that you're working with, and you'll be absolutely fine. And then you'll get to open your school, which is very exciting. She says, waiting patiently for my primary school to open in 2027 or 20, I don't know what year it's going to open now. So thank you very much indeed. I'll give you back to Tom there.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Susan. Great. So, and just to follow on from what Susan said there, if you want to find out more about how we can support you with your Readiness to Open meeting, please do get in touch via events like newschoolsnetwork.org or drop us a message on the hub. There should be a quick poll that will come up on the screen in just a moment, but whilst that's happening, I'll just let you know about a few things we've got going on. So we've sort of mentioned the NSN Hub here on the call already, but if there's anything, if you're not already on the hub, then there should be a registration link in the chat shortly. Essentially, it's an online community platform for free school leaders to sort of access events, resources, ask questions and share advice. On that, yesterday we launched a new program exclusively for principal designates opening their schools this year, and that will have a whole set of resources for people such as yourselves who are going through the last few terms of that reopening process. And we'll have our first networking event for principal designates taking place at 12 p.m. Tomorrow. As well as that, we will have it's an exclusive space, as mentioned, so ask questions for those last two terms. So do drop on there, take a look around at the information. We've got all sorts of guidance on how to make the best out of that space. So our next DfE partnership principal designate event is this time next week on Tuesday, and we'll be talking about building your team. And all that's left to say is thank you again to Susan, and thank you for attending today. And if there are any follow-up questions, please do drop them at the events email address. We'll be able to answer them for you. Thank you very much.